if, you know, for whatever reason you need to miss part of it, I will be sharing this with the list of students that I have. So if you want to make sure that you get a copy of this, just send me an email and I'll make sure that my email comes up at the end of this presentation. Okay, so welcome. This is the MARC Scholars Program info session and scholar panel for 2021 to 2023. So we are really excited that we are going to be able to offer the MARC program. And this is a program that is funded by the National Institutes of Health and UCSB. And the goal of the program is to train the next generation of biomedical researchers. So this is a program that is designed to provide research experience as well as professional development for students who are interested in biomedical research careers. So if you haven't noticed, I turned on these subtitles because since I'm making a recording of this, I want to make sure that it's accessible. So hopefully they're okay, but one more note before we get started. Right now I can't see the chat. However, we have several MARC scholars here who are going to be answering questions after I go through the first part of the presentation. So if you have any questions as I'm going through this presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat. And then when we switch over to the question part, either I'll answer them or the scholars will answer them. So any questions you have, just put them in the chat and we'll kind of keep track of things that way. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing to note is the MARC Scholar program. The applications are currently open and the deadline is February 21st, 2021 at 11:59 p.m. So there's plenty of time. I hope nobody sees that and starts panicking because this is really plenty of time to get together an application. And I hope that after I go through the overview and some of the details of the application, you'll see that it's really doable. And also our scholars will be here to answer any questions you might have about putting together the application. So the main thing to note on this slide is that the program contacts for the program. So this is all available on the MARC website, which I posted it in the slide right before. But if you just Google MARC UCSB, you'll find the website. So if you have any questions about the application, eligibility, how the program runs, you should contact me. So my name is Dr. Samantha Davis and I'm the program coordinator. And here is my email address, sldavis@ucsb.edu. Don't call my phone number because it's in my office and I literally don't know what happened to that. It's like been 10 months since I've thought about my office phone. So if you need to get in touch with me, email's the best way. And the rest of these people are part of the program and you will hear from them at various points, especially if you enter the program and you decide to accept a scholarship and work with us. But for any of the questions that you might have now, you can go ahead and contact me. And then my second disclaimer is that we are planning for the MARC program is going to be recruiting and selecting scholars regardless of what's happening with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We are planning that this summer could be in person or virtual or some kind of hybrid, depending on the campus guidance and the student needs. So we are hoping to offer a in-person experience, but we will definitely offer some kind of full summer research program this summer. Okay, so what is the MARC Scholars program? So, so far, I feel like some of you have gotten, I don't know how you've heard about this program, whether it was email from me or you got forwarded an email, but I just want to make it clear that the MARC program is a very, it's an in-depth training program for students who are interested in biomedical research. So if you're not interested in biomedical research, you may be interested in a number of our other research programs, which we can talk about towards the end. But this program is really focused on students, training students who are interested in biomedical research careers. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be a bio major. We've had students from engineering, from chemistry. It really means that you're interested in research that has biomedical applications. So scholars participate in a 24-month program. So it's a 2-year commitment. And this is a really awesome opportunity funded by the NIH. It includes scientific research training, leadership development, and grad school prep. And I'll talk about that in more detail, what that means in a couple slides. We, as the MARC Scholars program coordinators, will help you find a faculty mentor at UCSB who is in some research field that's related to biomedical applications. And again, this can be in biology and MCDB. It can also be in bioengineering, in chemistry, biochemistry, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, statistics. A number of different fields would be have research going on that is relevant to biomedicine. And so we help you find a faculty mentor, and you also are supported by a graduate student mentor and staff. So me and some of the people that I showed in the previous slide would support you in a lot of the professional development that goes along with the research training. So this program is designed as part of a series of programs that are funded by the National Institutes of Health, because they recognize that there are a lot of steps between I'm doing a biomedicine undergrad degree and I am now a biomedical researcher. There's a lot of steps in between. And especially for students from underrepresented groups or from first generation families, there is a lot of mystery about how do you go from majoring in a biomedical major to whatever degree that you want to do and whatever career you want to do in biomedicine. So this program has a lot of structural support to help you get not only research training, which is really important for a research career, but also providing networking and professional development that will help you sort of navigate the other aspects of that process. So what makes you eligible? What are the eligibility requirements? So number one is that you need to be interested in biomedical research careers. We don't have any expectation about people having prior research experience, so you are more than welcome and in fact encouraged to apply for this program, even if you don't have any research experience at that point. What we're really looking for are people that have interest, enthusiasm, excitement about biomedical research. And so you're interested, but maybe you don't have the experience that will allow you to figure out what it is exactly that you want to do. This could be a great program for you. You need to be a STEM major. So you need to be in some math, science, or engineering major at UCSB with expected graduation date of June 2023. So what this translates to is usually people are applying for this in their sophomore year. So then they have 2 years left at UCSB. It is possible to be planning for 5 years and apply in your junior year. And then you'd be taking, a super senior year, but you need to have at least 2 full years that you can commit to the program before graduation. Since this is a federal grant, you need to be a US citizen or permanent resident. And unfortunately, there's not really anything we could do about that requirement. But if that is not you, if for whatever reason you don't fit into that category, send me an email and we could talk about other programs that might be a good fit for you. The NIH especially is looking to support students from a disadvantaged background or a group that's underrepresented in biomedical sciences. So if you're curious about what that means, check on our website. There's a link and you can read about how the NIH defines disadvantaged groups or groups underrepresented in biomedical sciences. But this is not to say that you can't apply if you're not in any of these groups. It's just saying that the NIH is really looking to support students from these groups because traditionally they have fewer resources available and opportunities available. So what are the benefits? And again, for anybody that's coming in, you can make sure that if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. I don't see anything happening yet, but if questions are coming up, we can answer them. We'll switch over to answering questions in about, I think, 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, so what are the benefits of the program? So this program is well funded by the NIH, and so you receive 2 years paid research and academic training. So you receive a stipend for every quarter that you're involved in the program, so over that 2-year period. And so that's a stipend that is to support you as you're doing your research for the program. There's also money for partial tuition fees support. And so this is something that the exact amount is worked out every year. And so if you're part of the program, we would let you know what this amount would be, and it depends on the grant, but it's really valuable for students who need that support. So there's also support for travel to another research institution for the second summer. So I should explain that it's a 2-year training program. That means there's 2 academic years and 2 summers. So if you applied at the end of your sophomore year, you would have the summer between sophomore and junior year, and you'd have this summer between junior and senior year. And so there's funding and support to do 2 research internships, which is actually really unique for an undergraduate research training grant. So the first summer is at UCSB, and we would be working with you to link up with a mentor and do an independent research project, as well as professional development training. And then the second summer, there would be funding available, and the NIH actually requires that scholars travel to another research institution for training outside of their home university. And so obviously there's an asterisk there because that depends on, the pandemic and whether or not travel is actually possible. But the grant is supportive of students to broaden their training and actually supports them to go away from their home institution. And this can be a really valuable experience. And for many of our scholars, they've gone to do their second summer at a program where they are thinking about going for graduate school. And so it's a great opportunity to network, to see what it's like to work there. And several of them have decided to go to the same school and even work with the same people that they met during the second summer. Throughout the 2 years, there's leadership training. We have a couple of courses that scholars are involved in, as well as professional development activities like writing seminars, networking events, other seminars, career talks, and things like that. There's also funding to attend professional and scientific society meetings. So this year, a lot of the students have gone to virtual events, but I would encourage you to ask the scholars about the virtual events, as well as the events that they went to in previous years when leaving your bedroom was a thing. I would also say that overall, it's preparation for a PhD program in a biomedical field. And so that's the goal of the NIH, is to support students who think that's the direction that they want to go in. So they've got funding for things like a GRE prep course, exam fee vouchers. And so, not all schools are requiring the GRE anymore. And for anyone who doesn't know, the GRE is the graduate something exam, but it's basically like SAT for grad school. I'm blanking on what the R is for. But many schools require it. But actually a lot of schools are saying we don't need this anymore. What we are looking for are research experiences. So that's something to think about. The MARC program also allows you to get grad school application fee waivers. So as you apply, if you say that you're a MARC scholar, you actually can get the fees for graduate school waived. And those fees can be, $70, $80, $100. So it's actually a really, it's a great benefit for the program. So what kinds of things are scholars doing? So again, we have scholars here today who can talk a little bit about their projects and what it's like to do undergrad research as a MARC scholar, both in the pandemic and prior to the pandemic. So I just wanted to show you a little bit from scholars who have already graduated and what kinds of things they've done. So This is an example from Colin Kim, who was a MARC Scholar, I think in our second cohort, so back in like 2016. And Colin was working on detecting and quantifying bacteriophage on human skin. So this is a slide from Colin's final presentation during his first summer. And I know that for this lab, what basically happened is Colin joined a lab and had conversations with the faculty about what kinds of things were going on in the lab. And then he worked with a graduate student who had some, who wanted to know what types of, what was the bacteriophage community on the skin. So this was relevant to the larger questions that the group was asking. So Colin was able to join in and start learning methods and answering this research question with his research group. Another example, and so this is just to show you the sort of breadth of what is considered biomedical. So this is Clarissa, and she was in our third cohort, and she was studying the effect of natural space conditions on a living organism. And so some of you might be saying, what? What does this have to do with biomedicine? So Clarissa was a chemistry major, but she was really interested in I was going to say astrology, but she was interested in astronomy. Let me be clear. So she was interested in astronomy as well as chemistry. And so she was really interested in kind of like the space, the chemistry of all of the different like meteorites and things going on in space. And so she was talking with Professor Joel Rothman, who is one of our PIs for the MARC program. And he had a research project in his lab where they were trying to understand what the conditions would be like for space travel. And they were using this model organism, C. elegans, which is a very commonly used model organism in biology. And so they were trying to use this model organism to understand how space travel affects the physiology and behavior of this organism. And this is relevant because, you know, eventually they want to be sending people up to space, not worms. And so they need to have a baseline for understanding or predicting how human bodies and behaviors might be affected by prolonged space travel. So Clarissa was, again, a chem major working in a biology lab on a project relating to space travel. So we can really cover a lot of different things with this program. So if you have any questions about if your research interests actually align, you can just email me and we can definitely talk about that. So what is this, how do we decide who's going to be a MARC Scholar? Let me just check my time. So we're really looking for 4 main things when we're reading applications and making decisions at the interview stage. So we want to see motivation. We want to see that you're genuinely interested. You show examples of persistence and dedication, even if you've never done research before. Think about other areas, you know, could be your work, like you work at Starbucks. You could talk about, you know, how you've shown dedication or persistence in that job. It doesn't have to be, you know, talking only about science or only about research. We definitely want to know that you're interested and you're motivated to study biomedical, you know, research areas. But the examples that you give to show your persistence and dedication don't have to come from research experience, because again, there's no research requirement for applying for this. Professionalism. So this is a lot of, these kind of come in either in your personal statement or your letters of recommendation, where people can talk about maturity and responsibility and all of these things that are relevant to being a good researcher, but not necessarily related to doing research. So again, if you don't have any research experience and you're thinking, who could write me a letter of recommendation, you know, maybe your manager for your job can write about these types of skills relating to professionalism. Academic potential. So we have no GPA requirement. But we are going to be looking for success in math, science, and engineering coursework. And success is really a subjective term. So we're looking for, obviously, if you have A's, that would be one way to know that you're succeeding. But we also can look at things like trajectories. So maybe if you're in the introductory chemistry series and you started out with low grades and over the course of freshman year you improved, then that would be evidence of academic potential as well. And then the final thing, which is really, really important, is the potential for you to benefit from participation. So we need to know either from your personal statement, definitely from your personal statement, and or from your letters of recommendation, that you can benefit by being in MARC. So why do you want to be in MARC? What could it really do for you? What will it help you understand about yourself, about research? That's the type of thing that you need to have in your letter, in your statement. For academic requirements, like I said, we don't have a GPA for admission, but once you're in the program, we need the students to maintain a 3.0 GPA, stay a STEM major, and basically be a full-time student and attend the events that are required as a scholar. So again, for anybody who is coming in or didn't hear, put your questions in the chat if you have any, and we'll make sure to answer them in a few minutes. So the application requirements, if you go to the website, you'll see that there are kind of 4 main categories that we'll need. So first thing to do if you're thinking about applying is to fill out the online form. So this will, you'll fill out your name and kind of the rest of your demographic information, your career goals, and 4 prospective faculty mentors. So these faculty mentors that you put on the application, they're for internal use only. There's no requirement to contact them prior to submitting. There's no requirement that you have to work with them. The reason why we have you put these faculty mentors is so that we can have an idea of what types of research interest you. So you'll need to do a little bit of research if you haven't already as to the professors that you might want to work with. And the scholars can talk about that if you have questions about how to do that. We'll need your unofficial transcripts as well as an updated CV or resume. And so for the transcripts, it's just from the colleges you've attended. We don't need high school transcript. And we also need 2 letters of recommendation. So this can be from your professor, so a professor that knows you well, or a lecturer, a TA, or an employer. So we don't rank like, oh, a professor letter is worth more than a TA letter. What is the thing to think about is, can this person comment on one of those 4 characteristics that I mentioned previously? And do they know me well enough to do a good job? And so you can ask people about this, whether they feel comfortable writing you a letter of recommendation. You can also contact me if you have any questions about whether you should ask somebody or not. But if you think you're going to apply for the program, which I hope you do, the letters of recommendation, you want to ask people if they'll write you one sooner rather than later. And most of the time, if you give people enough time and they know you well enough, they'll say, for sure, I'll do it. And then the last thing is the personal statement. And so that's the last thing I want to talk about, is what should go in your personal statement. So this year we've streamlined the personal statement, and you basically are answering 4 or 5 questions depending on, I think the last question is optional. So you want to read the prompt carefully and kind of jot down ideas about how you might answer the question before you go ahead and type in your responses. I strongly recommend people draft it first. Don't just like sit down and just do a stream of consciousness, because that doesn't really give you time to reflect and think about how well you're answering the question, whether or not you've given examples of the things that you want to give examples for. So I always recommend compose your responses to the questions, copy the questions onto a Word document or a Google Doc, type up your answers, draft, get feedback from peers, mentors, parents, etc., and then go back and submit when you've got enough feedback and you're ready. It's a final version. And there are a lot of resources offered at UCSB. So right now, one of the things that is happening is a lot of the student organizations and student affairs offices are advertising these things on Shoreline or on their social media accounts. So you can go look for CLAS, Career Services, EOP, other student organizations, and they are doing workshops and panels and things to help students with these items because everybody knows it's application season. So I would strongly recommend getting on Shoreline and or following the social media accounts of these programs, including us, and we're at UCSB CSEP on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So you can follow us and we'll share things. We'll be sharing stuff that's coming up, resources that might help you prepare. So the last thing before we go over to questions is, again, I just want to remind you that the application deadline is February 21st. And that's when all of the parts of the application are due online. There's the website for the MARC program where you can read more in detail. And my contact info is there as well, sldavis@ucsb.edu. And I'm happy to answer any questions. So now let's go into the question session.
Hi, I have a question.
Hi.
So you mentioned that you should include like any transcripts from community college or like college in general that you've attended.
Mhm.
If I've attended a community college before Santa Barbara, like coming to the school, I should also have an official letter of rec. A transcript.
No, so yes, we need to see the transcript, but no, it doesn't have to be an official one. So
Okay.
all you'd need to do is log on to wherever, whatever portal you use, and either do print to a PDF or take a screenshot. If you take a screenshot, just make sure that it actually looks good. A lot of times people will take it with their phone and then we can't read anything. So make sure you take a good screenshot and check that it actually shows the grades, but it doesn't have to be an official document.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, any other logistical questions? Okay. So I had a question that what counts as a science major. So if you have any questions, and yes, geography would count, it would just depend on the type of research that you want to do. So it's got to be a STEM major and it's got to have, it's got to be biomedically related research. But if you're not in a major or doing research in biomedical field, but you still want to do an undergrad program, you might want to check out the Gorman Scholars program. So if you Google CSEP, or sorry, Google Gorman UCSB, you'll find our Gorman Scholar program. And we're actually having an info session about that next week, January 22nd at the same time, 5 o'clock. Okay. If you get accepted into the program, it's going abroad off the table. So the second summer research experience, it would be summer 2022. So there's no way to say what that would be. We really don't know. So let's see, can freshmen apply? You would want to apply as a sophomore. That's kind of the intention of the program. If you're interested in research as a freshman, you might want to check out the Eureka program, which is another one. If you go to our CSEP website or you Google Eureka UCSB, you'll find our program, and that's specifically for freshmen. And we have designed that to be one of the benefits of that program is to kind of on-ramp students into programs like MARC. So if you're a freshman and you're interested in research, check out Eureka, and I'll spell that in the chat. So yeah. Yes, no problem. Okay, so right now we want to, if there's any like more logistical questions, you can just send me a direct message or email me or put them in the chat. But right now I want to switch over to having some of our scholars introduce themselves, and then we can ask more experiential questions about the program, because I see there's some questions for the scholars in the chat as well. So
can I clarify one question?
Yeah.
The one girl, when she said, is going abroad off the table. She meant like, is studying abroad, like, you know,
Oh,
through AAP, is that off the table as a MARC scholar?
oh, thank you,
That's a
Alana.
better question for you than us.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So it would be something that we'd have to talk about on a case-by-case basis. So if you're interested in both EAP and a program like MARC, you really will want to email me, and so we can talk through kind of like what your plans are, and what kind of go through some ideas of how it could look. So my email is again in the chat. So thank you, Alana. So why don't we start with Alana? So we'll go through, and the MARC scholars that are here, they'll just take turns unmuting and give you a brief introduction to themselves and their research at UCSB.
Hi, my name is Alana. I'm a senior CCS biology major. I work in Max Wilson's lab, and I work on creating hydrogels that stiffen under blue light. Who's next?
I'll go. We're both second-year MARC scholars. Hi, everyone. I'm Adriana. I'm also a fourth-year CCS biology major, and I work in Dr. Carolina Arias' lab, and we study virus-host interactions. Particularly, I study a virus known as KSHV and how it modulates a cell stress response pathway.
You can go. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm a third-year biology or biological sciences major in the Herbert Waite lab, and I'm studying the adhesive qualities of mussels, specifically how they can attach underwater and stick to substrates. And yeah.
Hi, my name is Jackie, and I'm a third-year pharmacology major, and I'm also a first-year MARC scholar. I work in Dr. Denise Montel's lab, and my project is focused on anastasis, which is a cell surviving mechanism adapted by the cancer cells. So my project specifically focuses on how it's going to affect cancer recurrence after the chemotherapy.
Hello, I'm Octavia. I also work with the Denise Montel lab with Jackie. I'm a third-year biology major. I have not declared my major yet because I don't know what I want to do, but it's something along cell developmental. I do anastasis too, although it's a little bit different than Jackie's. I focus more on the molecular pathways related to neurodegeneration, which is also related to anastasis or cell survival. So that's what I'm currently doing. I'm studying neurodegeneration and certain things.
Hello, everyone. I'm a first-year MARC scholar, CCS biology major. I work in the Acosta Alvieta lab, and I'm currently working on looking at the toxic elements of whooping cough.
Awesome. Okay, I think that's everybody who's here. I'm scrolling through. Okay, so we have a question. The first question that came up was, for those of you currently in the program, so that's all of you, how have you found balancing coursework and research? And so why don't a few of you take turns responding to this question, and you could talk about balancing coursework and research in pandemic times, and then also not in pandemic times, because eventually we'll be out of those times.
I can start. I think in pandemic times, I think it has been easier to manage research and coursework because personally I have less load in terms of research, but I can speak on in-person more. When we did the summer intensive research portion, we were in lab 35 to 40 hours a week. So, and then we didn't have any coursework as well. So we were just focused on the research. And that shift from being full-time in lab to being part-time and having coursework in the fall was a bit rough for me at first. It was also combined with we went to a conference that quarter. So I was preparing a research presentation, and there was a lot going on. So I did struggle because I decided to take 2 upper division bio classes. So I think what I really learned from that quarter was to not overload my coursework, especially with research, because I wanted to have a balance and I did want research to be my focus. And the way I did that was to really spread out my bio upper division courses, particularly throughout the years. And if I had to take some in the summer, I ended up taking a class this past summer to get ahead. I think that really helps. But it's really important to make sure that you don't overload yourself in coursework, because with the scholarship and everything, research becomes your main focus, I think.
Other thoughts, other scholars, jump in. I know it's weird because there's so many of you, but just unmute.
I've personally had a different experience during the pre-COVID times. I found it a little bit easier because I could schedule something where I met with my mentor and then we would spend 5 hours during that day. However, now doing research online, you really have to organize your time correctly and you have to dedicate a specific block of time, which sounds different, but it really isn't, because you're going someplace pre-COVID, but now that we're in COVID, you're sitting in one place and you have to decide, when am I going to do this? When am I going to do that? And speaking personally, I tend to overestimate how much I can do during COVID times, because it sounds very easy, kind of like having a very free schedule. But there are also a lot of drawbacks that come to that, such as having to stick to a strict schedule.
Yeah, so I think in general, I would say, just from my experience, seeing several cohorts of scholars, it's challenging for everybody to kind of navigate the balance, especially going, as Adriana said, from the full-time summer internship to the academic year portion, because the expectation for the summer internship is it's a full-time research commitment. You're in the lab 30, 35 hours a week. But in the school year, you're a student again. So you're back down to like 10 hours a week or so. And so how do you still make progress? How do you add your classes back on top of that? What happens if you have a particularly challenging class? Everybody's kind of dealing with these types of things. And that's kind of just part of being a researcher, because as we've seen, it can be the normal upsets like, oh, I'm taking biochem, or it can be the really abnormal upsets like, oh, there's a global pandemic. So it's just a matter of trying to navigate, things are changing and everybody's kind of dealing with that. But I would say that the program, we try to provide a lot of support to help you get resources, for example, tutoring or study groups if that's needed, as well as having conversations with mentors about research expectations and how things could be more flexible and shifted and things like that. I had a question that was direct, and I wanted Alana to talk about it. So I had a student saying that they're a bio major and they want to work in bioengineering, and is that something that's possible with the MARC program?
Yes, definitely. I mean, well, my first lab, even when I applied to MARC, was in the bioengineering building. And then the project I ended up switching to after that PI left UCSB is very bioengineering heavy. So there are definitely bioengineering research opportunities here, even if we don't have a bioengineering department. In that case, well, okay, like pretty much everything under bioengineering is gonna pretty much qualify you for the MARC Scholars program, because that all still goes back to like biomedical research. But if you're looking for bioengineering professors that are doing that type of research, I recommend going through the BMSE website and looking at faculty on there, or the Center for Bioengineering, and you can get some recommendations there, or you can just private message me what you're interested in and I can try and match you a bit. But yeah, that's definitely the path I went down, so it's possible.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Alana. Let's see. If anybody wants to unmute and ask a question, you can do that. Otherwise, let's see. So somebody asked, do you join an already existing research project or do you come up with your own? So why don't we have like a couple of the scholars talk about that? Maybe Diego could start. What was your experience joining lab and how did you get your research project?
I think personally, I just joined a project, and it wasn't until I started working for a couple of months with them that I finally decided to pick a project myself. Especially since you're starting, and especially if you're new to research and you won't really know what's going on in the lab. So I really suggest just joining on a project in the beginning and then finally starting to find your own project as time goes on.
Maria, do you want to comment?
Yeah, sure. When I was going into this, I thought I would just be diving into my PI's kind of research. But when I first talked to him, he was like, "Oh, well, I've got this side project that I've been waiting for someone to like start on, so you can have it." And so he basically told me, like, I thought I was going to be working directly on muscle adhesives and how they stick to rocks and stuff, but he gave me this kind of passion project, I guess, about comparing muscle proteins to plant proteins and trying to see the differences and the similarities between them, and what makes them form and what makes them stick and things like that. So I'm kind of working on this project independently from the rest of the lab, with a mentor that's like, she's amazing. She's been guiding me through it. She's a graduate student. And so, yeah, you can kind of just, it depends obviously on your PI, but you kind of just go with whatever your gut tells you what your PI, yeah.
Jackie, what was your experience like?
Before I joined the lab, I was working on like a different project, a different lab. But since my interest was not like in genetics and my previous projects heavily focused on genetics and neuroscience, so after I joined the program, I kind of switched lab to a cell and developmental biology lab, where I found most of my interest lies. And then at first, when I was introduced to the project, the good thing about my mentor is that he's in charge of several different sub projects. So like the whole anastasis group are working on different things. So he kind of shows us like what kind of projects are there and what kind of project I'm interested in doing. And then I'm allowed to pick the one that I want to do and then go from there. So I would say it really depends on the lab and your mentor and whether a mentor is flexible enough to allow independent work.
Yeah, I'll just say from the perspective of watching many different cohorts, I would say the vast majority of students enter a lab and usually they have some conversations and start working on a project or an idea that already exists. And so that can be, hey, we have this experiment that we need done. You can take over doing it. Or it might be, the grad student is working on this project, but in order to continue that project, they need to know, they need to characterize the microbiome community on the skin, for example. So it might be something like that where the question exists, but you would have a lot of agency in designing the experiments and designing the way to figure out how to answer that question. So Jackie's comment leads into another question that I got in a direct message, which is it possible to switch gears in your research in terms of wanting to try something new? So I was thinking about Diego inviting you to answer that one. And then of course, anybody else who wants to jump in.
Can you repeat the question one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Is it possible to switch gears in research in terms of wanting to try something different?
Yeah, this is actually really relevant to my experience. So I actually started out in a plant biology lab during my summer of my freshman year, and then I continued with that during my sophomore year. And the thing you need to know about that is that there aren't a lot of transferable skills between plant biology and what I'm doing right now, which is microbiome, other than like basic pipetting skills. And because of the pandemic, even like that was like thrown out of the way. I think what's really most important though is that you actually show passion in your project and that you're able to show the PI that you're able to balance that kind of work life. because that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people leave labs, is that they're unable to balance their research and work life. It's a really difficult thing to balance.
I would agree with that. Any other scholars want to comment about kind of what, changing interests within the scope of the project? If not, I will say that it happens all the time, and that we never force anybody to stay in a research group or continue doing a project that's not interesting to them. We've had a lot of scholars switch, and not even, in a bad way, like, oh, they don't get along with the lab. Like, very much, I would say the vast majority have been, they find, like Clarissa, for example, I talked about her research. She was doing the astrobiology project. She realized after her second summer, she went and did an internship with a chemistry lab at UCLA. And she realized that she really wanted to get some more training in some specific methodology in chemistry. So she switched labs and joined a chemistry lab for her last year, her second year in the program. We've had many students do that in sometime in their first year or their second year, make a switch. It's totally okay. And again, the program is designed to help you understand the types of biomedical research that are occurring, so you can be informed when you make decisions about what you want to study and what you want to do as a career. So I want to ask all the panel, as we're wrapping up, I would love to hear, if you could give one piece of advice to your past self when you're thinking about applying to this program, or you're in your sophomore year and you're looking ahead at research or making the best of the time that you have, what advice would you give? If you have one piece of advice for a student that's looking at applying for MARC this year. So it's a big question, but whoever wants to start can unmute and go ahead.
I'd say definitely just find your passion. Go watch like TED Talks, go talk to professors, look at what they do online. Just try to find your thing and then focus on that, because that's what's going to carry you through the process.
Great advice. Diego, you're unmuted. You want to
go? Yeah, so I guess mine will be directed to letters of rec. I think a lot of people have a lot of options, but I would strongly suggest getting someone to write you a letter of rec who you know personally. If you have a teacher that you got an A in their class, but you didn't really show up to office hours, I wouldn't suggest going to that teacher. On the other hand, if you have a teacher that you got a B, but you showed up a lot and then you put in the work, that's definitely someone that you want to ask. So you want to get someone who knows you personally rather than someone a little bit distant, which can be a little bit difficult.
That's great advice. And I would just add that if you have any hesitations or concerns about letter of recommendations, whether you're like, I don't know the right person, or I don't know if I have two people, or who should I ask, just send me an email and we can talk about it. I'm sure that we could figure out in a conversation who would be great people to ask. So don't let that be the reason that you decide not to apply. Just send me an email. Alana, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm just struggling to come up with something. Could I give application advice maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this is actually the advice that I took from Roy when he did the panel, and it worked. And so that was basically just really, really emphasize the most important part of your application is what the MARC Scholars program can do for you and what you bring to it. That was what I really hammered home the most on my application. So yeah, I think that's my piece of advice.
I would totally echo that, and I probably told Roy that. So it's good to hear that it's like playing telephone, and it works. It really does. Jackie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I guess I'm just covered the interview part of the process because other MARC scholars have covered the rest. So I would say during the interview, maybe just try to be yourself and express that you're genuinely interested in your research. because the MARC scholarships trying to help those who have passion in research but found research inaccessible. So if you really wanted to do research and that's like a part of your future career goals, make sure to express that really well during the interview.
Adriana?
Yeah, I guess one piece of advice that I can give is I was really worried when applying because I didn't think I was going to get it. I for a while I pushed it off for the longest time. I was like, oh, I'm not even going to apply. But I would just say go for it if this is what you want to do. That sounds kind of cheesy, but I kind of waited until the last minute because I kept thinking to myself, oh, it's not going to happen. And at the time I was also in another research lab. So I can also speak to the question about changing gears. I used to work in a marine ecology and microbiology lab. And it's very different from what I do now. And at the time I was scared to tell my old PI, hi, I want to leave your lab to join another lab. That's a very awkward conversation to have. It wasn't fun. The preparation wasn't fun, but when I was talking to her, she was very open. She was very nice about it. She was very understanding because she knows that, you only have a short time in undergrad and, you want to explore your research interests. And if you're interested in something else, usually PIs are very nice about that. So I would say, give it a go. Don't be worried. I think that helped me back and then I procrastinated a lot. So just go for it.
Maria, did you go yet?
Yeah. I can speak more on it if you want.
Oh, you did go. Okay. So we have one more question. Jamie, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. Hi. I was just wondering if you all felt prepared going into research, and if not, what you think would have helped beforehand to either have known or done before you began research at UCSB.
So question being, when you entered the MARC program, did you feel prepared for taking on research? And if you didn't, what would you have done? So first part of that question, how did you feel research preparation wise when you started MARC?
So, I mean, I already was in a lab for about a year when I applied to MARC, but I'm interpreting your question more as like if you have no research experience. And like, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure that there's much you can do to like prepare yourself. It's kind of one of those things where like you just have to like dive in head first and like go in knowing that like they don't expect you to know anything at all. Like they don't really even expect you to like read a paper or like they'll teach you everything you need to know. They know that you're a blank slate and like they will help you. So yeah, really all you can do is just like dive in at first, like be as excited about it as you can and motivated, and that's it. I don't really think there's like technical like skills or knowledge per se that'll exactly help you when you start research.
I would totally agree, Alana, and I would just add to that really at the beginning, everybody starts at the beginning somewhere, and the MARC program is a great place to start as a beginner. And really, like I said, when I was describing what we're looking for, if you have passion and interest and excitement about some aspect of the field, like Diego was saying, that's going to carry you really far. And that's really what we're looking for at this stage. And that's what the faculty who would be your mentors are looking for at this stage. The rest of the stuff they can teach you. You don't need to have pipetting skills. And as Diego pointed out, what are pipetting skills right now anyway? It's like, it's really just like, are you excited? Are you ready to learn? Are you teachable? Are you interested? Are you motivated? And those are the kind of things that would be the preparation, especially now. So as we are nearing the end, we had one more question from Madison who asked, what's your favorite part of the program? So if the scholars could say either unmute or put it in the chat. So we'll just quickly go through. Everybody say your favorite part of the program. Maria, start, go.
I feel like being part of the program has definitely, it's like a gateway basically to find your perfect lab. And I'm just so grateful for my lab mentor and my lab PI. Like, I feel like we're a weird dysfunctional family. Like, they're always teaching me things. My mentor's like an older sister and she's just helping me and being like, no, you can't say that, or like things like that. And so, yeah, it's kind of just like finding a research family, which I love.
Great. Diego.
I think it's a support group that you kind of get. You know, Sammy has helped me a lot throughout this entire process, and I've always really appreciated that. And if you get into a lab that really accepts you, then they'll also treat you like family, like Maria said, and they'll be totally understanding if something happens or if you make a mistake. So finding that type of community has helped me a lot during my years.
Adriana.
Aside from getting into the lab that I wanted to get into, which was amazing, also the people that I've met, Alana is my best friend, Celeste and Roy, who are scholars that graduated this past year. We also grew very close. It's like a little family, like everyone has said, and then Sammy and Erica, I love you guys so much. It's just a great support system, and everyone's so sweet. So
It's so great. We have such a great community. That's my favorite part. Jackie.
I'm just gonna pitch in on how like the friendship is like bring us all closer together in this program, because me and Maria, we both are like really interested in doing an MD PhD together. And last summer I was prepping for MCAT, so we like chatted a lot on like what to do about the MCAT and we're gonna plan to reach our goal to be an MD PhD. And I just feel like it's really nice to have like a support system where I can share our progress and our frustrations all together.
Alana.
Yeah, I was also gonna say meeting my best friends. But otherwise, like actual MARC Scholar program, I would say I like working full-time in lab during the summer, just because I don't like doing class, but I love being in the lab. So that was perfect.
Yes, and the MARC Scholar provides a lot of opportunity for you to be in the lab all the time, pending, regulations and relating to the pandemic. So I will just add that previous year's scholars have been able to do that second summer abroad, and we're really, really trying to make sure that at least happens virtually for all of our scholars this year, in that they get to expand their network and meet people beyond UCSB. And I would say for people that are alumni that are not here right now, but are now in graduate programs, in MD PhD programs or PhD programs at schools where they were able to go and visit as part of the MARC program, they would say those were their favorite parts as well. So I would just say that the community, the MARC is basically the best friends club. So you should join us. That's like how I'm gonna end it. No, in all seriousness, if you have any questions, I am gonna end it now just because I wanna respect your time. But if you have any questions about the program, like, you're saying, oh, well, maybe I will apply, but I don't feel qualified, or I don't know if I can get letters of rec or anything like that, please email me. I'm gonna put my email in the chat, and any of the scholars who would be open to answering questions, go ahead and put your email in the chat, and you can contact any of us about any of these things. And we want to make sure that if you want to apply for the program, you have the ability to do so. Awesome. Thank you to the scholars who came today and answered questions. Thank you to everyone that showed up. I know it's 6 o'clock on Friday night, and I appreciate that you made time in your schedule for this. And yeah, thank you. And we'll see you. This is recorded, so I'll send it out to everybody that's on my list. If you want to be on my list for this or any other announcements about programs, just send me an email and I'll make sure that I add you. Oh, last thing, I want to make a quick plug. We have another info session for our other programs, the SOCNEST program, Eureka program, and Gorman program, which we didn't get a chance to talk about today. But if you're not interested in biomedical research, or you don't have 2 years to commit, but you still want a research program, or you're a freshman, come to our info session next week, January 22nd, 5 p.m. Register at the same link or email me and I'll make sure you get the Zoom link. Okay, now I'm really done. Bye, everyone.